Okay. Hello, everybody. I see some familiar faces. Welcome. This is the session that's called Thinkers, Talkers, Doers, Stakeholder Engagement and EOSC Synergies. My name is Erin Savran. I'm from the Swedish National Data Service in Gothenburg. And I work as a research data advisor for nearly 2.5 years now. And I mainly, part of my job is reviewing qualitative data that we receive from researchers around Sweden into our repository. SND is, the short for Swedish National Data Service, is a consortium of 9 of the 10 largest universities in Sweden. We are also involved with the Skills4EOSC project, which is a new European Commission funded project, which Emma will talk a bit more about. And so we've got 3 speakers today, and I will begin by introducing the first speaker, Emma Lazzeri, she's the Open Science Manager at Consortium GAR in Italy. And her interests are in the open science and research output management, including related strategies and training. And she is also our very own Skills4EOSC project coordinator. I'll leave it for you, Emma. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Erin. Thank you all for being here. I see many friends. The project is quite new. Skills4EOSC just started in late September, so the first presentation today will be about the project itself and its targets. The title is Meeting Different Stakeholders' Needs, because this session is about engagement. So the main goal should be to as a takeaway from this session, to have to know a little bit more of what you think are the needs of the different stakeholders that we will target in our project, and of course our targets for the EOSC training in general. So you probably know this is a news that was launched nearly a couple of months ago. President of the European Union, in her speech addressing the Union in September, state that we do need an enabling business environment and a workforce with the right skills. This, of course, is a more general speech, but if you go and check in the details, you will see that this also includes skills for researchers and related stakeholders. It was launched one month after the fact that the Commission would like 2023 to be the European Year of Skills. So I think that our project has a very good timing because it just started. And of course, you all know that in order to put fair and open science into practice, we need the right skills. We have understood this very well in the last projects and initiatives that were born in the EOSC environment. not only us, so not only people working in the EOSC, but also, generally speaking, our stakeholders. This is a quite survey that was launched on Twitter a few weeks ago, and the question was, what do you think is the biggest barrier regarding the adoption of open science practices? And not surprisingly, many of the answers were about training, about skills, but also some posted some comments that can make us think that there is still a lot of myths around open science and research data management that can be overcome by training stakeholders in the right way. So this is where the Skills4EOSC project comes, and where we hope we can contribute to the realization and to support the EOSC. This is actually the scope of the call that we responded to last year. So the call is intended to have researchers at the end of this project that can transform their way they carry out research, and they can exploit research outputs leading to a better quality of research and contributing to the EOSC partnership. So the project that I have the honor to lead has a very huge consortium. So we are 44 participants spread over 18 countries. I have to say that this project comes partially from the regional project that are about to end in this month, but also onboarded many new people and new faces. So I'm happy also that this project can contribute to spread a little bit the people that are working into the EOSC. We tried to put together what we call key doers, so some champions in open science that have a very an important role in their country or region or domain. We also involved two research infrastructures from the ESFRI, and the project has a total budget of 7 million euros. So in 3 years, we hope we can deliver something useful for the community. We aim at filling 3 gaps that were already identified in the SRIA, the most recent one. So the lack of open science and data expertise, the lack of a clear definition of data professional profiles and corresponding career paths, and fragmentation in training resources. I have to say that previously today in this room we had this meeting with all with the 4 task force that are working together, the upskilling task force, data stewardship, curricula, and so on. And I have to say that many of the things that I've heard today the task force are doing may feed into this project, and we could of course contribute a lot to the task force because we are working in the same direction. One thing that it's quite important for us is that we see fair and open science as making science and its results accessible not only for the peers, so we do not target only researchers in our project, but in order to make everything work in the right way, we will target different actors. So we will also consider and develop learning paths for policymakers and civil servants, citizens, private sectors. We have so many different targets in our project. We will do this by using adequate language. This not only means to translate resources and to deliver courses in different languages, but it means to differentiate the messages and the way you propose the contents in a way that the user can effectively uptake, and also using the right means. So we're not only producing courses for university students, but also learning paths and material that can be used to inform the right stakeholders. We know very well that open science is not far away from two other key principles or ideas that are responsible research and innovation and science for policy. So the fact that research can have an influence on policy and on society. So we are working with these very well in mind. The project will work with 3 pillars. So we will propose a fair by design methodology for open science teaching and learning. I have to say that for this we build on very good material that has been developed in the past by other projects and initiatives. Coordinate is a word that we use a lot because the overall idea of the project is to coordinate a network of competence centers on open science and fair data in all the countries that you have seen in the map. And the idea is that with this network we will raise competencies for an EOSC skilled European workforce. We have a few key concepts in our project. One is the minimum viable skill set that may resound you from the minimum viable EOSC. So ideally it will be a mapping of roles and corresponding skills that those targets need to have in order to apply the open science principle in their specific context. We will build on trainers approach. So the idea is to enlarge and multiply the number of people that can effectively train on open science in the different countries with a trainer mode. As I said, we have this idea of developing this fair by design learning material in a way that it will be immediately reusable by other trainers that did not design the resource itself. We also aim at harmonizing curricula and learning paths, and in this I saw many links today in the meeting with the task forces. Then we have this very particular concept that is the lifelong learning through professional networks. You will hear about this more in the training and skills session tomorrow with a talk that will be given by Luc. That is in our project. This is mainly the fact that we know that training is not done and finished when the course ends, but people will need, once they have also always during their working life to be updated. So this is how we aim to achieve this continuous update through the learning by doing and through the sharing of best practices with peers. And then there is this competence center network that we aim to develop. But going more into the details of the session today, we aim at developing paths for different targets. Who are those targets? I grouped them here. Unfortunately, the slide is not coming out very, very well, but with those dots superimposing. But we have I've grouped them into four groups for you. The first, and I think also the most interesting one, is the science for policy groups. So in here we will target honest brokers, civil servants, and policymakers. Those are people that will have to uptake the outputs of science and research with processes that are not so very well known by the research community. So this is the goal of the project, to let researchers know how they can forward their outputs and inform the policymakers, but also the contrary. So how can policymakers make use of what is already out there and what is an output that is shared thanks to open science and effectively take a decision based on that. Those people will need to inform through evidence. They will need to understand the needs of the policymaker, and there is a need to consider ethical issues at the Science for Policy interface that we do care a lot about in Skills4EOSC. In fact, we do have a whole work package that is designed to discuss legal and ethical issues in all the activities that we will do. The second group of people is the ones that are inside an institution, a research institution. So we are thinking of undergraduate, we are thinking of PhD researchers, but also data stewards and professionals, including data librarian, curators, legal and ethical experts, so research support staff, basically. Those targets will need to count on adequate and skilled professionists, data experts and support staff, of course. And then we will also target undergraduates and scientists at different career levels. For the professional networks that I was mentioning before, we would like to design this lifelong learning through peer networks. So what we would like to have at the end is empowered network that can put into practice lifelong learning through the learn by doing and the best practice sharing. The last group, and this ends my presentation today, is research infrastructures and thematic communities. So we all know that in order for open science principle and research data management to be really embedded into the workflow of researchers, those people need to see and to understand the tools, the methodologies, the metadata standards, or whatever they are, the things that are made for them and for their community, specific community. So this we will tackle in the project. We are building on previous work that has been done in the regional project. There were some pilots to train effectively researchers in their community. And for this, researchers will need to acquire specific open science and research data management skills. We will also target research infrastructure professionals. Also people that work in research infrastructures as managers, so having a more the role of managers and not only of researchers. Those people also have to know about open science and research data management. For this, we have a good link with a project that is called the Retrain Plus, that is led by University of Milano Bicocca. Maria Luisa Lavitrano, that I suppose you all, most of you know. And we have Monica here that works in this project. This project will deliver learning paths for research infrastructure professionals, and we will have a similar task in our project regarding specifically open science and research data management skills. So these are the targets and the main focus that we would like to discuss with you today. For this, we also have prepared a Multimeter. So you all know how it works, and we will have a short Mentimeter now, just to understand who you are and who you identify yourself with in the different targets that I just showed. So for this, I just close the presentation. And I hope I can do it as I did before. No? Yes, I did it. Okay, so I leave it open. And Arin, I guess I give the floor back to you.
Thank you.
So, and
yes.
Leave you a little time to identify yourself.
This is interesting, actually. Give it a few more seconds. No, it disappeared.
No, sorry. It's me touching. Yeah. I won't do anything.
Okay, so we can see that most of the people in here, roughly half, or maybe slightly less, are research support staff.
Yes. Yes. And also civil servants, which is something that is not very, it's a concept that not everyone knows, or yeah, there are.
No, I also think.
I suppose I would have become a civil servant if my phone was working.
Okay.
I was also going to say
we have
that
one.
you could be more than one sometimes. Maybe one of your roles are more dominant than the other, but I think sometimes it could overlap that. Sometimes research infrastructure professionals could be some of the others, maybe even policy influencer at the very least.
I have to say that this role mapping is not very easy.
No.
Yes, so we started this at least I started this exercise when I was in the working group of the previous executive board for the EOSC, and we did release this report about the digital skills for fair and open science, and it was not very easy. And also among the experts, we discussed a lot to find the final solution for the report. Yes.
You got someone. Okay. Right.
Yes.
Well, I will. I'll.
Yes.
Thank you, Emma. I'm not sure how close to stand. I think you can hear me all right, so I don't have to stand too close. Okay. I would like to introduce our second speaker, who is Sverker Holmgren. Sverker is the director of Chalmers e-Commons at Chalmers University of Technology in Sweden, and he's also a professor of scientific computing. At Chalmers, Sverker is leading the efforts towards good data management based on a long experience of e-infrastructure and data infrastructures for research, both on operational levels and policy levels. And Chalmers is also one of the participants in the Skills4EOSC project. I will now leave the floor to Sverker. Thank you.
So, thank you. So I will go to the end of the factory floor and talk about the needs from research when it comes to training and the topics that have been talked about already. I will describe this from the perspective of Chalmers, so what we are doing there at the moment, but I will also relate to these ideas of a competence center and things like that. I will be quite sort of concrete in some of these ideas, or actually on what we are also right now doing, and perhaps I also hope to provoke you a little bit with these perspectives, but we'll see. So yes, I am the director of something called Chalmers eCommons, and I'll describe that on the next slide. I also happen to be the co-chair, or one of the co-chairs of the EOSC Task Force for Research Engagement and Adoption, but that's not really my role here today, but I'll come back to that a little bit in the end. So what is Chalmers eCommons? So I'll describe it in one slide. So it's an integrated infrastructure or support function for supporting researchers when it comes to digital research. And this includes e-infrastructure, computing facilities, data storage facilities. It includes expertise, our research engineers, digital research engineers, and it includes what is normally called the data office at the university. So these entities all together is a single organization with a single governance, managed and steered by researchers. So this, I think, is a perspective that is, well, maybe not new, but perhaps a little bit unique since it's actually implemented in this way. So what we do then is that we also are the node of Chalmers towards national and international efforts and initiatives. So for example, we are the Chalmers node in the Swedish National Data Service, where Arin belongs, and I'll say a few more words about that later. We are and represent Chalmers in the European Open Science Cloud, so I'm the Chalmers delegate in the EOSC General Assembly. So we have sort of assembled all of these functions within a single organization. We are also taking care of the Chalmers efforts within our own research infrastructures, some of the national research infrastructures like, the bioinformatics infrastructure in Sweden, for example, and then also some international or global infrastructures. So we are dealing with and working together with those entities within our organization. So what's more? Well, we have a mandate that we should really give this integrated support. Our mandate does not explicitly mention open science or FAIR or something like that, but instead our perspective and the perspective of Chalmers is that these topics, open science, FAIR in the sense of properly managed and documented data, it is something that is in the core of research quality. So it does not really have to be sort of brought along by itself. It should be inside research and dealt with by researchers eventually as something that is very natural. So in the sense, having a large group of data professionals, for example, it goes against the thinking at Chalmers. We think that that is not scalable. We want the researchers to deal with this eventually themselves. And then, of course, they need to have the concepts and the opportunities. They need to be clear. And that is where training and the ideas of Skills4EOSC and the collaboration and the cooperation, national and internationally, comes into play. So this is an important sort of starting point for us. And Again, I would like to mention that the starting point is really not open science, and it's not data, it is that research is changing. So the fundamental concept of how research is done has changed because that it has become digitalized. There are new methods, new outputs, new models, etc. And there are new opportunities for collaboration and sharing. Collaboration needs proper documentation, fair. Sharing, well, that becomes open science once it is realized that it's part of research quality, to really share the data with each other and publications, etc. So the main idea of what we are doing is really that the traditional digital landscape is too fragmented, it's not coordinated, it lacks agility, and then Chalmers tries to do this in a coordinated way. And then open science and fair, etc., sort of comes naturally. So we have not done very much when it comes to training and upskilling locally at Chalmers today, but we have tried to identify what needs do we see. So now we come to the needs of our research community at, I would say, a typical university. And there, what we see today is that the individual researchers, young, old, all levels of researchers, they need to get concrete help with certain specific topics. So short lunches, for example, we have tried that. For example, on digital publishing, on data management plans, how to write and use a data management plan tool. On data documentation with fair mention, but the main part there is how do you document your data? Data sharing and publication, etc., but also analysis of data with different versions, those basic statistics, AI, machine learning, use of large-scale resources, computational resources for doing data analysis, etc. And all of this, a researcher, we find, is not focusing on one of these topics at the time because all of it enters the research process. So they will need help with all of these topics in a sort of an integrated way. And that, I think, is a main message. Of course, also funders' requirements. So the Swedish Research Council, what requirements do they have? The EU, Horizon Europe, what requirements is there? So you could have half an hour on this, and we have tried that also. And this is about what a normal researcher will spend on these topics today. So the idea of having like a week-long course or a longer course for the regular researcher, it does not work. It has to be very short, otherwise you get no audience. And it has to be very directed towards concrete problems. So that, I think, is a need, and it will continue to be a need. When we talk then about younger researchers, PhD students, when also related to what was said earlier, there we can see that we can have a bigger impact. So there is a training package at Chalmers today which is called General Transferable Skills, taken by all PhD students. And there we are now working to get a three-day module into that package, talking about, again, not only open science or fair, but everything that has to do with digitalized research. 3 days, not much, but that is about what you can get into a PhD education today, we think. It might change in the future, but today this is what we see is possible. And there we will use the short events, the material then, to try to do this for the PhD students. And here I can start to mention then, okay, what can we do with these networks? The national network, the national competence center that is coming to be then within Skills4EOSC. Skills4EOSC in general, well, we don't want to do everything here ourselves. We don't have the competence, we don't have the time. We really want to use material that comes from other places and benefit from that. And what's more, the researchers, they are moving around. and even PhD students are moving around. So they will benefit from seeing at least approximately the same material and presentations at different places. Then we see that we do have contact persons at each of the departments at Chalmers, sort of persons that are not included in Chalmers eCommons, but work together with us as a bridge towards the departments. They will need some more deep knowledge. And they will also need some knowledge about the future perspectives and what is going to happen probably in the world here. So they will have to know a little bit about European Open Science Cloud. They will have to know a little bit about future evaluation of research, but maybe not the details. So they would probably benefit from having deeper upskilling events, perhaps something that could be managed or developed within Skills4EOSC. Let me jump over the Chalmers leadership just a moment, because we also have our own staff then. The staff at Chalmers Data Office, for example, they would really benefit from having a solid academic education in these fields. So courses, or perhaps even a Master of Science in Data Management, for example. And they also need to participate in national and international activities, really work in a European project, for example. So then we have covered everybody at Chalmers except the leadership. And there, well, it was also already mentioned, I think, when you are a president of a university, you have a lot of things to do. And dealing with open science maybe is not on the top of your agenda. There could be specific examples of such presidents, but in general, no. So you lose the contacts with this world that is moving very rapidly. So what we see there is that in general at universities, they need to be presented what is happening, what are the best practices in research today when it comes to data sharing, when it comes to use of digital methods, etc. And they need to see the success stories. So our president at Chalmers needs to see success stories from Chalmers researchers that bring in a lot of money to Chalmers, for example. Or set up collaboration with a company in a good way because of data sharing. And then, of course, probably what we need is seminars on policy development and showing what is happening and making sure that our presidents in Sweden and everywhere else are engaged in this. And I think you will talk more about this a little bit at least later. So the setting, well, one thing that is important in the setting here is that the management, the president, has actually somehow at least adopted some mandates or some guidelines or some rules that we can anchor our activities in. So now we have a mandate for proper data management. It does not mention openness, but again it should come naturally, and it does come naturally. For example, it says that all research activities should have a data management plan. And that helps a lot, because then you can really go to the researchers and talk about, okay, you are supposed to have a data management plan. We can help you with that. Of course, you need sufficient e-infrastructure tools and support function. And then the Chalmers eCommons idea is that this should be available then under within the same organization. So that's very easy to get to those resources. And we then, as an organization, Chalmers eCommons and Chalmers, we need to take an active role in, for example, this national initiative, the National Data Service, and in EOSC. So that's essentially why I'm standing here, and that's why we are also the node in the Swedish National Data Service. So when it comes to really looking into the perspective of a competence center and how we think we need to work with the national and the international arena, the national competence centers will become important. every university in Sweden will not be able to fully engage in, for example, European activities. We need a mediator, a platform for that. And then we have this consortium, the Swedish National Data Service, that is hosted by Gothenburg University. The 9 of the 10 main research universities are part of this. And then one example is that we participate with S&D as the main node from Chalmers and Karolinska Institute at the Umeå University in Skills4EOSC. And we think this is a good model because it brings also in national coordination and collaboration. And actually S&D has a specific target from next year to create a national framework for user training resources to match researcher demands with new tools and services. So this platform at the national level is there. So that's about what I'm going to say. And I thank you for listening, and we will have a discussion later, I guess. Yes, thank you.
Thank you so much, Sverker.
Thank you. No.
We have another Mentimeter question.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess you can also raise your hand and start discussing. I wanted to point to Elena, that is here, that it is quite, if you look at the structure of the training at the Chalmers, I see it very much similar to what we do in Italy, where we have these short events where we hope we can gather together and reach a very broad audience. And then in those events, what we try to do, and it's similar, 1.5 to 2 hours. So people come and they think they will be done after 2 hours, right? And they will know everything about open science and research data management. And then the only thing that we do, we try to show them how much is in it for them, and at the end, they should be convinced that they need a full course, right? So this is the aim that we use, yes. And I see it very similar because you showed the same, more or less, approach, right?
You're doing this at the national level, right?
Yeah, we do this at national level, but in each university. So we try to have this approach in Italy, but we go to the universities and have this 1.5 hour seminar, or we do a webinar at national level, and then people come to the courses that are similar. Again, usually we do 4 to 5 modules. You said 3 days, so more or less, yes.
So I think there the difference is that we really want to do these short events locally with our own staff, because
yes,
it brings the connection between our own staff and the researchers.
Yeah.
Then we want material, of course, and there's more advanced
yes,
things we want to do together with others.
Yes. So this is what I found it very similar to what we do. And anything not on open access. Okay. Data management for PhD. This is interesting as well. We receive as the Italian Competence Center, now I'm switching my hat, and we receive a lot of support requests regarding data management plans. Yeah, not from PhD, unfortunately, because they don't have to do that, but from people participating in projects. They don't know how to write one. So, yes. I don't read it very well, sorry. How to present management. Oh, yes. So this is pretty much more about, I think, a science for policy interface. Yeah, how to present the open science and research data management at the management level, because they need to take important decisions in order for the whole machine to work. Arin, do you read better? Maybe you.
Yes. This is quite interesting, actually. So we've got variety here. Oh, yeah. And so we've got the ethical questions, philosophy of science, research philosophy, I guess. That's quite.
I don't know how to.
That's quite interesting one. Reproducibility practices. Oh, yeah. And open data outside organization, transdisciplinary communication. Transdisciplinary communication. Oh, yeah. That's always a tricky one, transdisciplinary communication. Been talking about it for years, but seems to be difficult to leave your bubble. Science quality for reproducibility.
So you just move the arrow.
Yeah. Tools
Thanks.
researchers can use now to do open science. Yeah.
Yes, this is
Some
part of also the disciplinary approach.
Yes.
Because it's quite different disciplines, different tools, and you need to know the exact one that is useful for your field.
Yeah, and that varies quite a lot, actually.
This is something we also experienced with the Italian group. At the beginning we had this broad open science and general open science training for researchers and research data management and FAIR principles and blah blah blah. But then we realized that if you don't exactly pick the right repositories, the right metadata schema, those people will have to do a lot of work after the course to understand what are the tools that they will need to use. So yes, definitely.
Yeah, it's me.
What?
It's me who wrote the...
You're the one who wrote that.
The tools? Yeah, I could imagine that.
Interoperability practices, standard vocabularies, indeed.
Yeah.
Data preservation, non-STEM researchers.
Who wrote
Yeah.
this science quality for reproducibility? Who was that?
Who?
Who? Yes.
Who
What-
was that?
What did you mean, Monica, exactly?
I mean that open science is very close to the world of reproducibility crisis in
Yeah.
conventional medicine or for medicine. And I think that having the correct idea about managing of data give you the clear picture that you cannot do what we usually do with data.
Yes.
We as researchers in the biological and medical.
You know.
Data management plan is not just at the end.
Yes.
It must be at the beginning. Before to do the research, you have to have a picture of
Yes.
which is the place for each data.
Yeah.
This is partly what I meant by saying that open science is part of research quality. I mean,
Yes.
so, and it's done today by many researchers. Not all areas, but in many areas, it is done today.
Yes.
Yeah, just in the
Jump right in.
Said, just in the UK, there's a major open research, as we call it, training program starting, and it's being led by the UK Reproducibility Network. So there's been sort of people coming at open science from different directions, and very much focused on the quality. In fact, I actually went to an event a few months ago, and it was about teaching open science, and it was mainly researchers, not support staff, it was researchers, and I really struggled to see the difference between open science and good teaching, good research practice. They were actually talking about good research practice, so it's made me think quite a lot now about how we approach open research teaching. So the approach that's just been presented today has been really, really interesting to see.
Yes. Okay, anything else? Connection, data, software, and publication? Yes. So you mean, I don't know who wrote this, but the link between all the different outputs, is that what this person meant, I guess? And this goes back to the discussion about the reform of research assessment. So you need to see how the outputs are developed and what is the link between all the different outputs and results, for sure. And this is something that researchers do not know how to do. So they may know, how to publish a paper, deposit a paper, but not really how to connect with data that are in another repository. And focus on non-STEM researchers. This we hear a lot when we do training, because often when you do examples, it's easier to take examples from the STEM, but indeed the non-STEM researchers have something to say. We do have Operas in our consortium that will target at least their community, which is a non-STEM community. Did we miss anything? Interoperability practices, standards and vocabularies. Others have mentioned that. Yeah. Yes. So, thank you. A lot of input.
Yeah. I was just curious. The one that mentioned the philosophy of science. In what sense were you thinking? If you'd like to elaborate that, do you think that should be part of the? That's like a when you're teaching methods and methodology, that this should be. That's how you're thinking, I guess. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Really interesting. Thank you.
Yes.
All right.
Thanks.
I'd like to stand on this side for the introductions. I don't know why, but so thanks very much for that. And now we'll move on to our last speaker, Katrine Weisten Bjerde. And Katrine is actually a special advisor for research services in Norway and is heading work on open science in the Norwegian Directorate for Higher Education and Skills. And she actually works on strategic planning, both for open publishing and fair research data in cooperation with the Research Council of Norway and other research performing institutions. And Katrine's the Norwegian Directorate for Higher Education, of which Katrine is part of, is also participating in the Skills4EOSC project. Katrine, I'll leave it to you.
So, is that?
There it is.
Yeah, I'm just, thank you. Yeah, perfect. So, as Arin said, we are also part of the Skills4EOSC project. And in that project, our responsibility is to look more directly at how to engage with policymakers. So I've tried to take some work that has been done in Norway last year and this year and try to turn it a little bit, look at those aspects of it that are most directly related to policymakers. So 3 different studies or investigations have been done. One report was made on how to share research data, licensing for research data. One was made where we trying to find out which services are actually available, which infrastructures and which services are available today to researchers helping them to create fair research data, and where are the gaps and what should we do next. And then the last report was a mission from the ministry asking for advice on organization and funding of data infrastructures. So again, that was covering fair research data, but also wider. So public data in general, and particularly data that is very relevant for use in research, although it didn't come from research. So what was a bit special about these three tasks or groups or work groups was that we used the same method to engage with stakeholders, both downwards and upwards. And the secretariat for all three was combined with people from the Research Council of Norway and people from my organization. So we sort of developed this, and we've been very happy with it. So we'll probably continue. So it's not a revolution, but it's sort of worked nicely for us. So we thought we'd tell a bit about it. So what we did, organization of these work groups, was to be very clear that we have been secretariat, we have been writing the reports, we have of course had a lot of influence, but the main task group, the main work group has been researchers and other kinds of stakeholders very close to the problems that were going to be solved. And all of the three groups have been led by a researcher that is highly respected in the community. And also we have been, when we talk about policymakers, we then talk about the top level management at the research performing institutions, so the rectors or directors as research institutes, but also the ministry. And we have been, both those levels, we have been keeping them informed all along the way about which direction we are going in, preliminary results, and getting their feedback also along the way. What we also did was to do something which was honestly quite uncomfortable. We, in all three work groups, we started very early to try and focus and say, where do we think we are going? And we published a very early result that was clearly unfinished and caused a lot of comments about, oh, this is not good enough and you're not doing serious work and blah, 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 blah. But also a lot of very constructive comments about where to move, how to change. And it seemed that it really engaged people. They were really able to tell us how to do it. And so even if it hurt a bit for us, it hurt our pride, it hurt a lot of things, but it was useful. It was very useful. And what we did after we have asked people to provide input, we arranged seminars, open seminars, where those people who had provided inputs they were invited to, actually I'm on this one now. They were invited to give very short presentations. With 3 minutes, you have 2 slides, you have to deliver them to us before the seminar, and we will cut you short after 3 minutes. Then we had a couple of longer presentations to give some framing to the whole thing, and then we had lots of time for open discussions afterwards. And we, in all 3 cases, we felt this was really useful because people really had to focus what were the most important messages they wanted to give us. So we had 20 to 40, it was a whole day seminar, and we had 20 to 40 3-minute presentations with breaks, of course. And we felt that was really, really useful. And it created good discussions. So as I said, the final reports from all these 3 studies contained recommendations that were very specific on who should do what. So the ministry should do blah, 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 or all the ministries together should be discussing the following things. The research performing organizations should be doing the following things. The libraries, the service providers, the infrastructure owners, and down to each individual researcher. And the responses on that was actually the institutions coming back and saying, you don't tell us what to do. We want to take responsibility. And we said, great, go and do so. And they actually have been doing that. So one of the tasks of my organization now, after reorganization of ministry-owned organizations, so my organization, the directorate, is responsible for having an overview of what is happening and trying to push a bit here and a bit there, but we are not delivering any services. We do not have very much money, but we're sort of nudging and trying to facilitate discussions, trying to help things a little bit along. And so far what we are seeing is a lot of activity. So if we provoked the institutions, we are very happy, but we also think that they were already doing a lot of good things by themselves. What we also did was to do these descriptions to the ministry, and we put a lot of effort into actually describing the benefits, very tangible benefits from investing in fair infrastructures. We all know these examples, and we know them so well that we forget to talk about them. So we had a whole load of examples saying, you do this, you do that. I'll give a talk about that on Wednesday. And ask me if you are interested in more. The report from that where we do this is going to be translated into English, so it will be available. The ministry was already quite willing to see the importance of investing not only in infrastructures but also in people and the actual time for those people to acquire knowledge and to apply their knowledge. And I think the last sort of very wise thing was done by the head of our last working group, the one giving advice to the ministry on funding and organization, was making it very clear what will happen if we invest a bit but not enough. He said, then we will have all the costs and not the benefits. And that seemed to ring a bell. So at least what's happening now is we have this new long-term plan published by the ministry or the government for research and higher education, and it states there's a separate chapter, you said, there's a separate chapter here on open research. So in the next version it shouldn't be on open research, it should be on high quality research. And it says explicitly that the government will base its work on research infrastructures on the recommendations of that working group. So it's like, yay. And after that, we have had no time and no resources to do anything more about it, so we're working on that now. We also have this action plan that we made in the middle working group that was actually working with the research institutions, not so much with the ministry. We have this action plan now that says we will follow up all the recommendations from these 3 working groups, and the next step will be, together with the institutions, to decide which should be prioritized. And again, the institutions are doing loads themselves, but the smaller institutions are struggling. So I think the big institutions will be able to handle this all by themselves, but what we are trying to do is to see that all the little things that need to be done are done, and to help the smaller institutions also get along the road. So that was what I was planning to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yay.
Thanks. Thank you. We've got our second last question here.
Yes.
In your opinion, what are the most pressing needs for science for policy in terms of open science? So Emma spoke a bit about it, and it's been raised one way or another in the other presentations. We would love to hear your thoughts on that.
So yes, both on the needs that you think are for researchers to inform policymakers. So what do they need to be trained on, and also the other way around. So what should the policymakers know about open science in order to effectively use what it's already out there and is shared by researchers?
Yeah, and this obviously connects to challenges as well in one way or another, so feel free to focus on that if you like.
Learn a language to effectively communicate to policymakers. Yes, it's not always easy. Elena and I always speak to Elena today. You have this bright color. We were involved in a course by the JRC for Science for Policy, and one thing that I remember very well is that they told us that you could prepare as much as you want, a very long presentation, 20 minutes, spend nights over it, and then you come to the policymaker and they give you 2 minutes. Usually it is like that. So you should be prepared not only to give your very long talk with all details, but to select the messages. Like, you need to know this. So the suggestion was to prepare different speeches for different time. Teaching policymakers where to look for research results and data for their decision. This is a good point, yes, to know where to find things. And I could add also which are the trusted sources, and also be aware that what is out there may be a preprint or a work that hasn't been reviewed by the community, or be prepared to look for the signals for evidence in the paper, or so know how the research process works. Researchers need to understand what is on the politician's agenda. Yes, this is not always easy.
That's a
yes.
tricky one.
Yes, and it's not always easy, and they can also be trained on how to, I don't want to say to influence,
vice versa.
But advice.
Yeah.
Advice. It's a better word.
But I think to really learn which words to use in order to get them to say,
oh, that is interesting. Yes. And it's often the case that researchers think that after they are done with their research and they have a very nice output that is very relevant for their community, they often think that they can go to the policymaker and show exactly the same output that they showed in the latest Congress. But this is not the case, because policymakers usually don't look too much at that, but maybe a different way of showing things, and picking different results that maybe are not so relevant for the research community, but are very relevant for policymakers.
Yeah, I had to learn that the hard way when I started. I have a researcher background, and I started at S&D, and it was totally different language that you're using in communicating both internally and to funders and others. So yeah, I had to learn to bring it down a notch and stop being so analytic. Just be direct and so on and so forth. This thing with languages, really, and the discourse, that's really interesting. So we've got to understand that merit for researchers is needed for fair data and metadata. Merit, yes. Make clear to policymakers that data...
Oh, sorry, I tried to...
Data is a key asset. Yes?
Yes. We skipped this, which is very long.
We've got a comprehensive picture of what is needed for research, transparency, and quality assessment. The results are a combination of several aspects, not just the published articles, for example.
Yeah, so not only reading the article, but also looking for data and other results, maybe, or elements that will make sure that what is published is sustained by evidence, probably. I'm interpreting. Oh, yes? Sanna?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
I was also thinking about when they make policy,
Mm-hmm.
when they make legislation, that they don't think about data as one isolated bit, applications as one isolated bit,
Okay.
and software as another isolated bit. But they understand it as a whole infrastructure, even when they make policy and these different choices. So that is also
Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Let's see, did I miss anyone? Convincing policymakers of the value of research without immediate or obvious economic or commercial applications.
So long term.
Yes, very long term. Ties into what Katrina was saying.
That is true. Sometimes it helps, as Katrina was saying, just showing that if you don't spend this lot money, then you will lose them all, and or maybe also something more because you didn't act.
Economic costs of the lack of application of open science.
Yes.
That's a good one. It's always good to bring up the financial side of things. A stronger researcher perspective to balance the perspectives of other stakeholders who might have a stronger voice.
Okay, so those that speak louder but maybe do not have strong evidence, or is that what you mean?
And perhaps also those that represent researchers, maybe as well.
I saw an article some time ago about how policymakers or politicians tend to engage consultants instead of researchers.
Okay.
That one, I don't know. It wasn't me who wrote that, so just maybe think of it.
Instead of having researchers as, so they need someone in the between to translate.
Yes. To translate.
Yeah.
And then maybe those consultants sometimes do not get the total researcher perspective.
Yes, okay.
Yeah,
okay.
I can imagine.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was thinking about the third task and how researchers are supposed to be neutral and not bend their research to the interests of others. People advocate towards policymakers can come from all walks of life. So they might have other interests as well. Researchers should
Yeah.
but might not have such a strong voice.
Yeah. It happened, I think, with the COVID. We all saw that sometimes researchers were pushing for very strong actions to be taken, right? Because, okay, let's close ourselves in home and that's it. In this way, we don't have the virus spreading. But, policymakers have to take also other things into account, like economics and social aspects. And so sometimes researchers tend to be too strong in their opinion or want to influence the policymakers more because they are the experts, but they are the experts in their field. And they should also understand that the policymakers are the experts in their field. So they need to cover more information or I think we have a last one.
Understandable examples and best practices to translate the importance of open science in today's world.
And examples come again.
Yeah. So understandable examples. What would that look like? If one can give an example of an understandable example.
Yeah.
Been everywhere.
It is the translation between these very high-level articles into examples that actually reach today's world and not keep being this scientific mumbo-jumbo for a lot of people that doesn't translate to their day-to-day life at all. I think if we manage to put that information in articles and what we discover with research into examples and best practices that actually relate to day-to-day life, that's also politicians and policymakers will be way more interested in embracing open science and what that means for the world today.
Yes, so this brings the discussion back to what I was pointing out in my presentation, that you need when you obtain your result as a researcher, that you will need to communicate in different ways to different people, and that doesn't mean only to write an article and publish it on a journal, but also to make a version that is more digestible to policymakers, for example, or to citizens, right? And for this, you need competencies of other people, like communicators or people in the university that maybe can communicate in a more efficient way, because researchers usually are not very good communicators. Yes.
The researchers that you see on the TV are the researchers who are able to do this and to get a lot of,
Yeah.
because of that, they get a lot of attention for the work, funding possibilities.
Yes.
I think a little bit more on how do you communicate, how do you translate stuff to a wider public.
Yes, and in this, the institutions have a big role in their communication department. And yes, and there are a number of different examples that you can find. There is this Austrian group that published this research report for their institution every month, I think, and they collect the latest results of their researches, and then they publish a 2-pager with the most relevant and brilliant outputs in a way that is useful for policymakers and also for citizens. More, a language that is more understandable. Yeah. Yes. Is there anything, a new one? Maybe? Sorry. There is one more. Open science is intrinsically more trustful. It's more transparent, I would say, trustful, you mean it gives, I don't know who wrote this, but it gives yes, of course, if you share then and you do not hide, I can trust you more. Is this the...
Come back to the quality.
Yes, of course.
And also what you say before is very true, because I come to the quality aspect of the open science from the animal experimentation field, that is a quite particular field. But we need to do now for the new directive a non-technical record of each project, because this society need to understand what we are doing. For open science probably is the same. We need to speak also for people that are not scientists or
just
not
regular
scientists
people.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
I leave it to you.
All right.
We have 5 minutes to wrap up.
Okay. I think, well, first of all, I would like to thank you all for coming and attending this session today. I know some people had to leave early, so thanking those as well who are not present at this moment. And many thanks once again to our 3 speakers. An applause for them. And I hope you've managed to take something away from today's session. And of course, the idea is that we'll keep on discussing these things and try to move forward. And some of the things that we touched upon today is what we're actually trying to deal with and managing the Skills4EOSC project. It is a very timely project. I'm actually, forgot to mention that in the beginning, I'm the work package leader, in one of the work package leaders, and the sort of, you could say the final key one about stakeholder engagement, which inspired today's session. In managing this work package, I also thought, well, what are the sort of the challenges? What are the needs? What do people think? People who work in this area in data management and data science overall, maybe in open science. What do you guys think? So I do like to thank you for your inputs today, and like I said, we'll keep these discussions going in future conferences and symposiums, and so thanks once again. Thanks for coming.